Stepfather 2, also known as Stepfather 2 Make Room for Daddy, is a 1989 film directed by Jeff Burr. It's written by John Auerbach, and this is, of course, a sequel to the 1987 film Stepfather, and we have a cast including Terry O'Quinn, Meg Foster, Caroline Williams, and Jonathan Brandis, and various others. Great performances, really good premise, not a bad sequel. There will be spoilers for the previous film, but I won't spoil what happens in this film. And Terry O'Quinn plays the same character. He plays Jerry Blake. And he's the stepfather. In this film, he meets a woman called Carol. She has a young son called Todd. And before long, he's in a relationship with Carol and spending time with her son and getting to know him and taking on that stepfatherly role. And as the film progresses, we start to learn more about his dark side and his questionable and sometimes aggressive behaviours, and it doesn't take too long for things to get pretty intense. And as a narrative, it works really well. As a sequel, it works. It's similar to the previous film in some ways, but it's not just the exact same story told again. So it's definitely not too bad as a sequel. I think it works well enough. And generally, I'd say that I enjoyed it. I don't think the character was as interesting as the first film, and I think the reason for this is because with the first film, he gets darker and more unpredictable, and the darker he becomes, the more interesting he becomes. And then, obviously with the sequel, we're dropping it back down again, not quite to zero, but certainly he's a lot tamer to begin with, and it takes a bit of time to kind of rebuild what we built with the character in the first film. And that's not to say he should have picked up where he left off in the first film in terms of how angry he became or how angry he was coming across as, but it just means that the character drops down a bit with how he was developed in the first film. But that makes sense with the film. It's just something that means it doesn't work quite as well because we'd built and built and built on this character in the first film, and then that kind of gets knocked back a bit. So it meant that the character wasn't as interesting. Or at least it wasn't as interesting to watch as it was with the first film. But because a lot of the situations are different and the start of the film as well, I really thoroughly enjoyed. I won't say exactly what happens or what has happened between the end of the previous film and the start of this one, but I think it was a really good decision. It made a lot of sense. It worked really well, and it was a really gripping way to start things off. And actually there we do get quite a lot of his anger and a lot of the character's nastiness, but then again, because he's being nice to people in his new neighborhood, it drops down again. So we're not starting from zero, but it does take a bit of time to get that character back. With regards to everything else that's happening, I think we have some really good characters. The narrative flows well, the pacing is very good. It's not as scary, and I think that's largely because the character isn't as interesting. The first film was really intense because the character was. Whereas it's not as strong here, but it still works well. The performances are really great. And I'd say ultimately, Stepfather 2 is a worthy sequel. I will be watching Stepfather 3. I am looking forward to it. I don't know what to expect. I haven't looked ahead. I have absolutely no idea. But with Stepfather 2, I thought it was a decent experience. Not as intense or as scary as the first film. The film's not necessarily scary, but it's the unpredictability of Jerry's nature meant that I was always on edge, always waiting for something to happen, and often those things did happen. So it's not terrifying in that sense, but it does make me feel really uneasy, and that in itself is quite a scary experience. So definitely quite chilling, I think, is a good way to describe it, and I hope the third one is just as good. The sequel might not be as strong as the first film, but if you liked The Stepfather, absolutely check out Stepfather 2, and hopefully I'll be able to say the same thing about the third film. Looking forward to watching it, and very happy to say that Stepfather 2 was generally a pretty decent experience.